Here at GP Montreal, Marshall Sutcliffe with Jacob Van Luna. We're going to be watching Alex Watt play against Chris Ha. This is Alex Watt, his list. Ooh, Raul is it Viceroy down there. His 5-drops look good there. Hypothesis too. And then, yeah, so this looks like a pretty reasonable is it build. What are his big win conditions? Wee Dragonauts, Piston Fist, Cyclops. Nice.
Yeah, Murmuring Mystics. I watched him play in round 10 here with this deck, and Murmuring Mystic was just disgusting.
Yeah. And it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Chris Ha, now this is a deck that we had talked about earlier. Jake, you and I watched this deck come together, and Chris kind of hemmed and hawed about whether he wanted to be Demir or is it, and it looks like he ended up just mashing them all together. Look at that mana base, 5/4/6 with 2 gates. Ugh. Not pretty.
Yeah. I mean, so the Gravity Punch also a little awkward here. Thing is, card power level, super high. He's just a pile of removal and creatures. If Chris Ha's mana works out, it's going to be really difficult to contend with that.
By the way, these are our 2 undefeated players left in the field as well. So Chris versus Alex is going to determine who gets to continue with that unblemished record and who's going to leave with the next one. Now, this is a big match here. Here's a League Guild Mage for Alex. His deck far more streamlined than Chris, but Chris has a lot of options as far as power level goes. And critically here, Jake, well, this is interesting. He's actually not going to play it, but he does have the Gateway Plaza there in his hand, which really helps a lot. That unlocks so many of his cards. The games where he draws that versus not are going to look a lot different.
Absolutely. He has that Gateway Plaza. He even has the Mountain, so he naturally drew all 3 colors.
Yeah, but that still can be tough for him.
Yeah, he does have some.
Like,
some
for example,
spells.
if he plays Mountain here, right, just as an example, he is playing that Pitiless Gorgon, which is supposed to be easy to cast. He couldn't even cast it with the Mountain. As it stands, though, he's going to take a turn off of casting anything super meaningful to play the Gateway Plaza. But he even then did play the Poisoner. Ooh, but it's going to get sent back to his hand. That's aggressive by Alex. Book Devourer is going to hit the graveyard off of the Surveil trigger, and boom, he's going to crash in for 6 damage. Alex Watt not fussing around here. That is some aggressive stuff.
Yeah, very, very, very aggressive there. Alex pitched that Hellkite Whelp early to the Burglar Rats, then watched Chris Ha unload with a pair of 1-toughness creatures.
And there it is. The best card in both players' deck, probably Murmuring Mystic. They both have a copy of it. Alex Watt really well set up to abuse it, but Chris Ha, it's no joke in his deck either. Still, Chris has some major inconsistencies with his build. He really does. Like, he's running Gravitic Punch in this deck. Look at the cards he has on the battlefield. He had a 1/1 Death Touch, a Burglar Rat, and a Mystic. These are all defensive, long game, grindy cards, and then he's got the random boars that you'll see right here. There's a Rebel Belt boar on my Burglar Rat. Guess you do what you got to do. And he's actually going to cast Disdainful Stroke, so that doesn't even hit the battlefield here.
Yeah, it could have been any 4-drop. Could have been the best 4-drop in the format. It still would have hit that Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, and this is a risky block by Chris Ha, but at 10 life, he didn't feel like taking another 2 was worth it, so he blocked with his Mystic, and he got it Lava Coiled, so it's out of here.
Yeah, and he's got to be super disappointed with that. The thing is, you kind of have to block being at 10 against the Izzet deck. They have, a lot of ways to sneak in the last points of damage.
He doesn't know what Gravitic Punch does, Jake.
Oh, that only targets players.
That is a major problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. It's week 0 of the format.
Yeah, he probably played it because he thought he had Death Touchers.
It makes way more sense to see it in his deck now that I understand what he was thinking that it did.
Yeah,
he thought it was a punch or a fight card, something along those lines. It is most certainly not. But you know what? I actually feel a little better about his build now, because if it were that, it would make so much more sense in his deck. And we were just talking about how he's got these inconsistencies by playing Gravitic Punch, and I'm going, what is he thinking with this? And now I understand what he was thinking. Now, the fact that he was wrong, that's bad.
Oh,
that is that card. We didn't say it, but we are certainly alluding to the fact that it's really bad in his deck.
Yeah.
And now he's going to have to get stuck with it in his hand. He will be able to sideboard it out after his game ones, but it's stuck in his deck for game one.
It's even more frustrating that Alex Epps knows about it now, because you're no longer going to just get him randomly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like hypothetically, there are situations where Alex could think, I'm playing against this control deck that doesn't really have much in the way of win conditions. I can just sit here and take a bunch of damage, and it's no big deal. And then suddenly he gets down to, like the 7 range, and Gravatic Punch plus Jumpstart is enough to kill him. That's not going to happen anymore, because Alex knows about the punch.
Yeah, Alex has taken a more controlling stance, by the way. He just traded off his Piston Fist Cyclops on the ground for one of the Rebel Belt boars, and he's now drawing an extra card per turn off of the League Guild Mage. And this is, again, Chris's primary game plan being quite punished here, as look at the total power among his 3, 4, 6 mana worth of creatures. It's 3. And with 3 power, one of it can't even attack in there. The League Guild Mage can just run rampant on this board. The good news for Chris is that he drew Hypothesizzle, and he does need to make sure he's careful. You don't target when you cast Hypothesizzle. So, I didn't hear what he said, of course, but like he put it on top of the League Guild Mage. That is not how the card works. You just simply put it on the stack, and then if you decide to discard a card, hey, we found a good use for Gravitic Punch. We did it.
Yeah.
He did certainly make his intentions clear, though.
Yes.
There's Leapfrog.
That's a fine card to pitch to Hypothesizzle.
Ideal, maybe.
Yeah.
And another copy of League Guildmage here for Alex Watt. So the problem has not stopped here for Chris. Ooh, but there's a deadweight to take care of it. And killing the second copy of League Guildmage, really important here, because unless Chris can get some real pressure going, that's the type of card that in the long game can give Alex Watt an unassailable lead on card advantage.
Which is, how Chris is planning on winning the game.
Chris decides to leave back the Muse Drake ostensibly as a potential blocker for the Leapfrog, but Alex says, well, I'm not even going to let you do that. I'm just going to trade this thing off on the ground anyway. Bartisan Bats looks pretty good here for Chris. Finally a good source of pressure for him. He's now got 4 in the air, but here's Hypothesizzle, and Alex, you can tell he's cast this card before. He's going to discard Radical Idea, a fine card to discard to that. Plays out that land. He must have another one in his hand so that he can cast a Radical Idea and pass it to turn back. But once again, Chris Haw, out of real pressure, right? He's still only got 2 power on the battlefield.
Yeah, he's going to need to find more power. It looks like he may have a Piston Fist Cyclops in hand that...
Okay, that could help.
Yeah, that
maybe.
Puts a decent clock on. Because
Does
Alex
it?
has...
Does it?
He has that punch in his graveyard.
Okay. No, you're right. That's a serious advantage there.
It's funny in this... I think he also has a Moonmark Painter in hand. So while there are no creatures in his graveyard, he could use it to give the Piston Fist Cyclops menace.
If it can attack.
Yeah. Well, then he could also jumpstart his punch, right?
Yeah, he will need another mana, but you're right. Here's Capture Sphere, and this is a big play because... Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Because Chris Haw does now have the power, as we mentioned before, with that Piston Fist Cyclops and the Gravitic Punch in his graveyard. He can kind of do it.
Yeah.
Now, if Alex has an answer for the Cyclops, then that'll be different, bud. All right, target you this time. Before, he, of course, tried to target a creature with it, which is illegal, so he took the card back. He did end up pitching it. Wow. Risky biz here. If Alex has a bounce spell or something, this could be a huge setback for Chris, but it doesn't look like he does. So Gravitic Punch is going to resolve, but there's Whisper Agent with the trigger. Ooh, kept that one on top. Trade off for the Cyclops. He did take 4, though, before, so he should be down to 2 here, right?
No,
or was he higher?
I think he was at 12.
He was at 12? Okay.
Yeah.
So he's at a relatively comfortable 6 life. He's going to bounce his own Rubble Belt Boar with Unexplained Disappearance and then just recast it to have a blocker for, of all things, a Burglar Rat. And there's the Mood Mark Painter of all. I guess it's lethal. Boy. This has been quite a ride this round here.
Yeah, this is.
We're figuring out a lot of stuff on the fly. Alex Watt's going to kick things off with Ornery Goblin. And once again, we see the really rough mana base from Chris Ha. His first two plays are Dimir Guildgate Island, and he has Direct Current in his hand.
And no red mana there.
So he's miles away from casting that. Obviously, Mountain off the top.
Sure.
Okay. He doesn't play it. What is he setting up for by playing an island? Now he's another turn away from being able to cast Direct Current if he needs it. Even if he draws the red mana source.
Yeah. Perhaps trying to convince Alex that he does not have red mana, hoping that Alex will play differently as a result.
He's very convincing.
He is very convincing. I would believe with certainty that my opponent did not have a mountain if they did not play it.
He didn't get punished for it here. There's Rubble Belt Boar off of the mountain here on turn 4. Burglar Rat in the red zone. These Burglar Rats have never been so feisty. Okay, Radical Idea here from Alex. Alex has some nice payoffs for cards like Radical Idea. Yeah, he's going to have to settle for a League Guild Mage here, though. But with that dead weight in the yard, that could be good. Well, that is one way to do it. Just draw your red mana sources. Finds the Gateway Plaza. That means that he can use Direct Current the next turn on the Guild Mage, though he will have given up some value there, as the Guild Mage might have already been activated by that point.
See,
but Direct Current looks pretty nice there.
It looks like he's putting a Piston Fist Cyclops and another card on the top of his deck here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a Hired Poisoner.
It was, but it ended up going in the graveyard. No, he just prioritizes getting the Cyclops down now rather than setting up the red mana for next turn. So he may have to wait yet another turn cycle to get the Direct Current going. And if I were him, I'd be looking at that League Guild Mage and thinking, well, boy, if he draws 2 cards off of it before I even get a chance to really do anything, this could get awkward. Also, speaking of awkward, he draws Watcher in the Mist, and he'd like to cast it here, but again, further and further away goes that Direct Current, and better that League Guild Mage gets. Kind of a weird dynamic with his mana here. Just going to bite the bullet. Oh, but Disdainful Stroke.
Wow.
Is going to counter it. That was big.
That was a very big Disdainful Stroke. And Chris Ha declines to...
He just doesn't play a land here?
Play a land there, yeah.
What in the... Maybe he's got one of his... well, I guess we know he has one of his Jumpstart cards in hand, perhaps just trying to maintain it for that. His deck's pretty mana hungry overall, but yeah, he could probably get away with that. Draws some Mood Mark Painter. Yeah. And there's the Gateway Plaza to set up the kill on the Guild Mage perhaps next turn, but for now he just has to sit here and do nothing. And the Hellkite Whelp gets to do 1 damage to an opposing creature when it attacks, so it's going to spit a little fire down on that rat. Toasty. What does Alex have here? Land. He's got Book Devourer. Looking to upgrade his hand, perhaps, or even just get in for a bunch of damage. It's pretty
Tasty
big.
Books.
It's pretty big.
It is. It's got a body. It's adorable.
It's really nice here, too. It holds back the Piston Fist Cyclops, so even if Chris decides to go for the Direct Current, he might not be able to get in and attack this turn unless he has something else.
There's some interesting stuff going on.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, I mean, Chris can cast Direct Current, getting rid of the Guild Mage. He can use Moonmark Painter, get in with the Cyclops.
He can do both, you mean?
Yeah. And that will give the Cyclops menace, so, you know, he gets a clean attack in.
It's a big attack, too. What is it, 8? I think he's got all his creatures pulled to the bottom there.
Yeah. So Alex all the way down to 8 there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Bang, bang. Oop, but there's Lava Coil. Attack with Bulk. This is a major attack here from Alex in the other direction. He gets to do 7 himself. And then he can devour some books here, get rid of his hand. That's the island that he had left. Draw a card.
Chris draws Gravitic Punch. We got there.
Rebel Belt Boar does not get him in for extra damage here, and he can't cast it plus Direct Current.
No, he cannot.
Boy, this has been quite an adventure here.
It has been a bit of an adventure.
Between our undefeated players.
Yeah, Direct Current, really no good targets right now except Alex himself.
All right. It's just he can't unlock the Piston Fist Cyclops, and he is going to fall behind if he takes a turn off from attacking with it. Right now he's facing Lethal. So he's going to go upstairs, discard Bartisan Bats? Put you to 2? No, he's just going to get blocked. Well, that's actually a big deal, though. Because that means that Alex Watt no longer has lethal.
Yeah.
That block was a big, big deal. He's got him down to 1. Oh, but he had Sonic Assault. Didn't see that. My bad. So he actually had him down to -1 rather than 1. So GG. All right, game number 3. Poisoner starts things off for Chris Ha. I don't even know how to describe this deck. I'm not going to try.
It's a Grixis deck.
Grixis what?
I mean, it's
Aggro?
Grixis. No.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
It has Gravitic Punch.
Did he not sideboard out the
I don't know.
Gravitic Punch?
How do I know? He didn't draw it.
I think his deck definitely would have been better served if he had, if his creatures were a little more, butt-centric. Things like this. The Informant here, this is exactly what he wants. He wants things with a lot of toughness.
This is why it's funny that he's running Gravitic Punch.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, the thing is, he wants things with a lot of toughness. He doesn't.
Look at his draw. He's got Hired Poisoner, Dimir Informant. Here he's going to play Mystic, or he might not because he might want to play around Disdainful Stroke. But there's a Gravitic Punch. And he is going to run the Mystics out there. And he's going to get Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, and I mean, he knew about the Disdainful Stroke also. It's important to note that, when you're in situations like that and your opponent doesn't do anything on like a key turn, like turn 3.
You mean he knew that you mean he knew that it existed?
He knew that it existed.
Not that it was in his
previous
hand.
games.
Yeah. Both games, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a great point, Jake. It's true.
Yeah, and cards like Disdainful Stroke are cards that get significantly worse when your opponent's seen them once. Because suddenly your opponent can put you in a situation where when you leave mana open to counter their spells, you can then they can take advantage of that by simply playing less expensive spells. Especially if they're ahead on the board, they can just attack you and pass the turn right back. You can leave open mana for a removal spell of their own.
League Guildmage got activated on the last end step. Chris said, well, I'm just going to keep it that way with the Capture Sphere. But Alex had an immediate new League Guildmage to replace it. And right now, Chris still with no real attack force, just a Hired Poisoner on the ground. So he's going to go digging. Discovery Dispersal here for Chris Ha.
And that's interesting. I think he has double Artful Takedown, so I'm surprised he doesn't use that to deal with the Guildmage right away.
A little surprised about that, too. Radical idea now for Alex Watt. Remember, Alex already got effectively a 2-for-1 out of his first Guildmage. He activated it to draw a card, and then Chris used a removal spell on it. So he's up a card in that transaction, and those type of things add up, you know.
Yeah, and I think Alex can tend to continue doing that. He had a lot of good plays that turn. He declined to take any of them because he realizes here, I'm under no pressure. My opponent has 2 1-power creatures in the battlefield. I can block one of them, and then I can just draw an extra card. If my opponent has a removal spell for my Guildmage, then I'm 2-for-1ing them. And if they don't, then I just have the opportunity to pull way ahead here. Ooh, okay.
Hypothesizzle here. It's going to kill.
Huh, okay.
Whoa, did Alex just trade off for the Poisoner there?
He did, and that's really surprising to me because I think he does have his own Mystic in hand, and those birds do a really good job of just preventing the Poisoner from applying any sort of pressure.
Oh, this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to keep the board completely clear with Ral.
And that makes a lot more sense now. Chris Ha, if he does not have a direct current right away or a creature to punch in with, he's just going to be in a world of hurt. In a previous round, Alex Watt was able to destroy a Selesnya opponent with Murmuring Mystic, which was unbeatable for the Selesnya opponent. This round, he's against a Grixis deck. If you have a Planeswalker against a Grixis deck in Limited, it is just nightmare mode for them.
Yeah, Alex with the very aggressive trade-off with the League Guildmage, but look what the result ended up being. An empty board with Ral Izzet Viceroy, plussing now after having killed the last creature to go. And when you start plussing that, it's look at the top 2, put 1 in your hand, 1 in your graveyard. It gets out of control fast, and now he's got his other best card, Murmuring Mystic, basically. Yeah, this one looks like it is fully fallen away from Chris Ha. His disheveled game plan and relatively inconsistent mana base may have finally caught up to him here. He has managed to get to 10-0 in the tournament up until this point, but it does look like he's poised to take his first loss. Now, that's not the end of the world for him. He's going to have to play one more round with this deck, but if he can squeak out a win with that, he could put himself in great position for top 8 still.
Yeah, and I mean, even if he loses that round, he's 1 draft away from top 8, even then.
So, Chris, perhaps a bit of desperation here is going to use Artful Takedown. He needs to kill the Guildmage and the Murmuring Mystic to be realistic, so he's going to do half of the job there. But Ral is ticking ever upward.
Yeah, Ral's already, drawn 2 specified cards in addition to having killed one of Chris Ha's creatures. It's just starting to get completely out of hand, as if it wasn't already completely out of hand. And here you see the power of the Mystic. My favorite uncommon in the set. I think you would agree with me. We've talked about it a bunch this weekend.
Yeah. Mythic Uncommon. My early pick for Mythic Uncommon for sure. Card's absurd. Especially in this deck. Seriously, like this is the showcase for it of all showcases. Like Chris has one in his deck too, and it's darn good. It's one of his better cards, but for Alex Watt, it's in his like top 3 cards. Like it's right up there with Ral. Like it's insane.
Yeah. Absolutely agree.
Where with Chris, it's a little more in the middle pack. It's a good value card and a great blocker. But Alex Watt is going to be on Bird Patrol. And you can see the reason here. Look at this. He's got drawing 2 cards a turn. Plus, he has cards like Jumpstart here with the Radical Idea. And all of those just turn into birds and eventually win the game.
So, I mean, an Artful Takedown buys him a little bit of time, but it's really hard to imagine any sort of combination of cards that Chris Ha could draw at this point to get back into the game. This Ral Zarek is just...
Oh, it's over.
So good.
Yeah, this match is donezo. This one is going to go to Alex Watt. I feel very confident about that at this point. and Amuse Drake certainly not going to do it. Hypothesis will a fine rip here for Chris Ha, but again, it just doesn't solve the problems that he needs solving.
Yeah, and it's always frustrating when your deck's pile of removal and you find yourself facing off against a Planeswalker. It's not what you expect to see when you sit down for a limited game of Magic. And Chris Ha hadn't seen this Planeswalker until this Game 3.
That's right.
Although it's worth noting, I think I've forgotten that this is a draft in the feature match area, so I believe players have the other person's card pool.
They do. I mean, not that he could have done a whole lot about it, but he probably was like, oh yeah, there it is. I forgot about that. By the way, bird tokens abound as Alex works his way through the end of the game here, and he's just going to start dumping his hand on the battlefield, not fearing any type of sweeper at this point. And this is the turn where things completely went off the rails for Chris Ha.
Yeah, Alex, massive board, more cards in hand, more lands in play, winning on every single front here. Ral Zarek got completely out of control. Murmuring Mystic out of control.
Chris is going to go hard for Hypothesisal, but the two creatures that he actually cares about the most, he can't even, doesn't even kill it.
Yeah, Murmuring Mystic and Book Devourer.
Right.
Both have 5 toughness.
They don't care. Gravitic Punch getting discarded to Hypothesisal kind of sums this thing up. He's got a combo, though. He's got Deadweight, it looks like, as well, to take down the Book Devourer. But again, he has too many problems to try to solve here. He's got Lethal, and he just shows him, I've got plenty of spells to kill you with. I can get him with this Piston Fist Cyclops, and with everything else, that's plenty enough. And Alex Watt is our last undefeated player with what looks like a very strong and consistent Izzet deck. And Chris Ha is going to have to try to scrap together a win with what looks to be a very inconsistent Grixis deck on his side. Power level pretty high. We described it when he was done with his draft as a pile of removal.
Yeah, and
which it definitely is.
Decks like that tend to do reasonably well. The problem is that he just doesn't have the gates. He doesn't. We watched there. Like, he had the turns 4 through 6 where he was struggling to cast 3-drops in that range, despite having drawn his best lands. Having drawn all 3 color sources, he was still struggling to, like, double spell when he was at 6 mana and had a handful of inexpensive spells. And, his opponent was able to, capitalize on that by not getting run over. And then Murmuring Mystic and Ral Zarek came down and just took the game over. Yeah, those are the 2 best cards in the deck there for Alex. So, good stuff. 1 undefeated player left in the field, and then we've got Alex, who's just right behind him there as well. Chris, who's right behind him there as well. So I think we're getting ready for a little more Time Walk, since we're kind of all on Time Walk here. So again, I mentioned it. I'll mention it again briefly before we came in. We're kind of asynchronously doing this now. It's kind of cool. So we're recording these matches, and we're not synced up with the tournament anymore. We're about 20 minutes behind it as far as our recording goes. Now, it's still happening live behind us, but for us, we're going to be showing you basically just Time Walk matches, just only a little bit behind, so be careful for getting on Twitter. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, though, we'll have more Time Walk here from Montreal. We'll see you in just a few.